Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. Today's video features true scary stories sent in from viewers just like you. Sit back, relax, and stay sinful. Story number 1. I had a randomly assigned roommate in college who was a very sweet religious girl. She kept to herself mostly, but she was always really kind and polite. This was the first year I didn't seem to have a bitchy roommate, so I was excited to get along with her. About 2 nights after we get moved in, I wake up to hear someone sobbing softly outside my bedroom door. It was a really weird sound, this kind of desperate, creaky sobbing, and I was so scared at first because it sounded like the stuff you hear in horror movies, or like The Witch if you've played Left 4 Dead. I heard someone moving around the apartment and occasionally coming back to my door, scratching on it softly, so I finally summoned the courage to peek out of my bedroom. My roommate was just walking around the apartment crying. She was sleepwalking apparently, because her eyes were closed, but when I opened the door, her head turned to look right at me. Then, she slowly went to the kitchen table, picked up a pencil, and started to scrawl this weird symbol on her door. It looked like a circle with a triangle in it. I asked her if she was okay, and she just stood there, swaying and crying. And I was basically just like, nope, and I locked the door. The next morning, she was really scared and mad at me because this demon symbol had appeared on her door, and she thought I had done it to prank her. She didn't believe me when I told her she was the one who did it, but accepted my denials that I did it, and we dropped it. Several times throughout the year, I'd wake up in the middle of the night to hear her in the kitchen, talking to herself. Every time she would come to scratch softly on my door, and every morning there would be another symbol on her door. She was still convinced it was me messing with her. I considered filming her, but honestly I was really scared of opening the door, because I watch way too many scary movies about demons. Then one time, we were in our separate dorm rooms when there was a huge bang from her bedroom. There was obviously no one else in the dorm, so we were both really freaked out and decided to investigate. We looked everywhere and nothing had fallen down, and there were no windows or other doors to the bathroom other than the one leading to our living room. We pulled back the shower curtain, and there was a huge arc of blood on the wall. She went pale but had no explanation for this. Later that night, while I was studying in total silence, she rushed into my room and demanded to know what I had said. I asked her what she was talking about. She said she was in the bathroom and heard me talking to her, like I was whispering something through the wall. After that, whenever she was gone for the weekend, I always heard weird noises coming from her side of the dorm suite in the middle of the night. She moved out at the end of the year, and that was that. But I've always wondered what that was all about. Story number 2. This next story was sent in by Melissa. This happened to me a few years ago. It was late May in the evening. I had just finished cleaning up from dinner, and it was a nice evening outside. I have 3 large dogs and have to take each of them individually for a walk. My oldest dog is 11 years old and deaf. He is usually the first walk as he gets tired easily. I grabbed my phone, put my earbuds in, and headed out the door with my old boxer. I live in a rural area in Nova Scotia, Canada. The houses are quite far apart and set quite far off the road, so I never had to usually worry about running into many people on my nightly walks. The area I live in is also very safe. Nothing really happens here. I was about 10 minutes into my walk listening to scary stories on YouTube. Yes, I listen to horror stories as I walk my dogs in the dark, when I noticed headlights coming up behind me. I didn't pay much attention, just moved closer to the side of the road and pulled my dog over into the dirt to stay off the road as the car went by. I kept walking and noticed that even though I saw headlights from behind me, They weren't going past me. I should also say I'm 35 years old, about 5'4", blonde hair that was up in a ponytail. I had a feeling that I should turn around, and when I did, I saw a big pickup truck with 2 people inside, pulled off on the side of the road about 15 feet behind me. There are no street lights, so I can make out only the silhouette of the driver and the passenger, but not their faces. I kept walking, thinking they had just pulled over for some reason that had nothing to do with me. Well, I was wrong. About 30 seconds after I turned around to look at the truck, it started to slowly creep along the road behind me. I was getting a little freaked out, but tried to play it off, like I didn't care what they were doing, and I kept on my walk. Please keep in mind, my dog is very old and would be of more help to me if these people were to get out of their truck. I started walking a little bit faster, and the truck kept following behind me. About a minute later, I decided to turn around and start heading back to my house, so I had to walk past the truck. As I turned around, they stopped in the road and didn't move. I was getting in full panic mode at this point, so I pulled out my phone to call my husband. As I was dialing his number, the truck started honking its horn at me, and the driver rolled down the window and said, "Hey, we're lost, can you help us out?" I ignored them and kept walking, praying my husband would answer the phone. He was still at work and didn't pick up, so I started walking faster. The truck then did a turn in the middle of the road, turned its high beams on me, and sat there revving its engine over and over. The sound of this made me start running with my old dog, who has a hard time walking as it is. I'm running with my dog, the truck still sitting revving the engine. Then all of a sudden it takes off towards me. I can hear it flying down the road towards me, and they're now honking the horn over and over. I was still at least 5 minutes from my house, and between me holding onto my dog and running, I dropped my phone somewhere in the dirt on the side of the road. I kept running as fast as I could with my dog and turned my head to see they were heading straight at me from the road. I grabbed my dog and jumped down into the ditch to narrowly avoid being hit. The truck kept honking as it drove down the road past me and kept on going. I truly thought I was going to end up kidnapped or dead from them hitting me. I was so terrified. I pulled my dog into the woods for at least 15 minutes to make sure the truck didn't come back. I made it home and called my husband from my landline. He was almost home, so when I told him what happened, he was so sorry he didn't pick up when I had called him. I did phone the police, but they didn't end up finding out who they were. Just a word of advice: don't walk along dark country roads at night with an old dog, and always carry pepper spray or something with you to protect yourself. I never thought something like that would happen to me that close to home. Story number 3. I'm going to preface this by saying I went to a boarding school for 6 years. This boarding school was in the middle of a one-stoplight town and on a hill 800 feet up. The school used to be an old monastery. It was hundreds of years old and huge with 4 stories, including a basement where there was a boiler room and long hallways. Not all of these stories happened to myself, but the people who told me them were reliable enough to believe. Also, the school didn't want us telling stories to other people because they were afraid it would make them not want to go to school due to it being haunted. The first event happened to me. I used to be in charge of cleaning the gymnasium at night. Every student had a job they had to do either at night or in the morning to help take care of the school. It taught you some practical things and all. Anyway, I was there by myself that night getting ready to start sweeping the gym. The gym had 2 floors to it. The upstairs part was a weightlifting area, and you could see it fully from the bottom part of the gym where the basketball court was. As I stepped into the gym, one of the basketballs starts rolling a bit. I look around to see if any doors are open, and none of them are. I chalk it up to randomness, but see that it is continuing to roll. As I watch it, it makes a full circle around the entire gym and stops right next to my feet. At this point, I'm a bit scared, but figured it was nothing. I heard a creaking coming from the second floor and I look up. There was a girl there, just staring right at me. As soon as I made direct eye contact with her, she bolts to the stairs that would take her to me. She let out a scream that I cannot describe. I was terrified and frozen in place. Thankfully, she didn't come to me, but took a left and bolted through the main doors of the gym. They didn't open. She just went right through them. Story number 4. I was an EMT for a while. We got a call about someone who was riding their bike at breakneck speed when they hit a car head first without a helmet. We went out immediately. Despite the fact it was broad daylight and we were in the middle of suburbia on a Saturday, nobody even came to check on this poor man. Seriously, the streets were empty. Usually a massive crowd gathers around violent accidents like this. So his skull was pretty much smashed in and he was unresponsive. It was the worst head injury I'd ever seen. We assessed that he had a major skull fracture, a concussion, and he was bleeding profusely. He was also missing teeth and had minor road rash, but unfortunately he wasn't missing much skin. To give you an idea of how bad it was, this was the kind of injury that most people don't survive. If you did survive, you'd basically be a crippled vegetable. Normally we would have moved him off the road, but when someone has a head or neck injury, that isn't very safe. My partner, who was also training me as I was still kind of new, went to check his pulse while I began to unload our gear. He crouched down, felt for a pulse for a while, and then stood up and opened his mouth to say something. Suddenly the guy jumped up. He didn't use his arm to pick himself up, he just jumped to his feet. It startled the two of us. He looked at us, smiled, and attempted to grab his bike. We tried to stop him, but we didn't exactly want to wrestle him to the ground given his condition. He gets away from us and bolts into the woods without his bike. My partner was in even more disbelief than I was. He just stared at where the man had run off, mouth agape. Then he turned to me and muttered, "He had no pulse, man." I asked him if he was sure, and he swore up and down that the biker was clinically dead. We contacted the authorities for assistance, and they sent out a search and rescue team to the forest. I don't know if he was found or not, because we normally don't get much information about patients after they go to the professionals. My best guess is that he went to a loved one's house out of confusion. What I found odd about that is, head injuries bleed like hell, so you'd think the guy would have left a long red trail of blood for the cops to follow. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future content. Email all of your true scary stories to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com, and I will feature your story on an upcoming video. I'll leave a link to my email in the description box below as well. And until we meet again, stay sinful.